Hello, everyone. We're coming live to you on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday. Have to be flexible in these kinds of times because everything is, the world is a crazy place, and sometimes we just have to be flexible. So, very excited to have Mo with us, teaching us a little bit more about After Effects. Something that Neil has been requesting is to learn about particles. So,
Hello, I'm sorry, I didn't see myself on. Hi.
yeah, you're on.
Hi. Okay, so I think hello everyone. So particles. I think Neil wanted to learn a little bit about particles inside of artifacts and particle creation. So I'm gonna just share my screen right off the bat.
Okay, awesome.
Right. So we are in After Effects, as you can see. I've imported a few files. I'll just show you what they are. The first is just the skyline. The second's kind of like almost Batman kind of thing, and then that's a snowy little thing, and that's kind of New York looking down, Empire State looking straight down. So there's just a few things, so we don't have to worry about those for now. So let's understand what particles are and how they created, and what they really can do. They go from all the way from being very simple to extremely complex. So I'm going to just dive right in and create a new composition. Okay, just without any pictures or anything in here, assets, just a 1920 by 1080. And in my effects and presets browser, I'm just going to type in particle. So everything that's associated with particles appears here. And there's a number of third-party plugins like Boris Continuum Particle Effects, FX Factory Particles. We have, the big one. Well, I wouldn't call it the big one, but one of the industry standard ones, which is the Boris stuff, but also Particle Illusion. So Particle Illusion, comes in as a video copilot Particle Illusion. Um, and if I go down here to,
So
let's
is
go.
is particle illusion part of Boris?
I'm sorry, I meant to have said particle illusion was part of trap code Red Giant, so
Okay.
it's not part of video capital. But I'm so sorry, that was a big Google. So your question, Marim, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, okay, because I think people want to know, uh, okay, so is that the name of the company?
Yeah, trap code does particle illusion.
Okay,
Sorry,
particle illusion.
trap code does particular, which is quite the industry standard, and Boris does particle illusion. That's
Okay,
something completely different.
particular. Okay, I'm going to put this in in the chat so that people have it from Trap Code. Okay, cool.
Right. So if I go into particular, so you can see Red Giant. It was particular is made by Red Giant now, so it's part of the uh, entire suite, but it's found separately called Red Giant
So
Particular.
they should go to Red Giant if they want that one.
Yeah, Red Giant does particular. That's the main. It's kind of almost the industry standard, I guess. And then Boris does a very very decent one as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at initially what comes shipped with After Effects. So I'm just going to create a new solid layer. I'm not going to worry about the name or anything. And you'll see in here we've got the simulation, CC particle system, CC particle world, and CC particle playground. That's built into. It's known as Psycho Effects. It comes shipped with After Effects, so you don't have to go and buy out these other plugins if you want to work with certain types. So we'll look at particle playground. So I'll just drop this onto the solid like that, and right now you'll start seeing something here, right? So let's make this white so it's easily seen. And you can see that it's just a number of little dots that looks like kind of a fountain right now. And that's the basis of a particle system. A particle is one of these little dots that you see right now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the particles in here, can you see them? These tiny little pixels. Let me make it full resolution so you can see. And they kind of just do something, really.
Right.
So the trick is to actually make them do what you want them to do. So I could move this little thing around like that and kind of play around with stuff, but it's really not going to do much. So when you're doing particle work, there's a ton of stuff in here that you need to be aware of, right? This is just a simple particle system, right? So it's got position, barrel radius as an example. If I do this, look at what happens to my particles. Okay, they
Cool.
kind of explode, right? So again, they're tumbling around, and all particle systems are made in three-dimensional space. And when I say three-dimensional space, if I take a new camera, if I make a new camera, right, just any normal camera, and if I go around this, you'll be able to see that I'll be able to go around the particle system in a three. If you look at this, it's like a three-dimensional axis, but it's not yet three-dimensional. So we have to wait to understand how particles work in a 3D environment, right? So for now, what we're going to do is look at how we can actually make things look different with this particle system. So let's just go back to scratch. I'm just going to delete that particle playground, and I'm going to drop back a bunch. So it's at default with the red color. We're just going to make that a white color and go with here. All right. Now, let's look at the position. Very simple. X and Y, nothing major. Let's just take it up towards the top of the screen. So it's actually right there. Let's bring that up. So we got the particles emitting from that point. So this little area that you see all the particles are starting from right here, that's called an emission area. That's the emitter. So it emits from something. Let's look at the particles per second now. You must understand what this means. So I'm going to crank this up to a lot, and it's going to slow down my machine considerably because the more particles you have, the harder it is to render. If I go like this, you can see it's emitting more particles per second. All right. So like a hose pipe. If you put your thumb there and let the water trickle, if you open it up, more particles. So there's more particles. So that's particles per second. I just undid that. So if I look at my direction now, you can see I can do that to my direction. But let's look at something else. Let's look at the velocity. Now, this velocity, as you can see, it's the velocity of the particles per second. Let's go back. So let's take that velocity up like that. And look what's happening to the velocity. So let's look at that. It's just the velocity speed of the particles, right? Very simple to understand so far. If we look at layer exploder, so the explode layer, it's asking us from where do we want it to explode from. So if we had something like a text layer or something, we could make it explode from there. So if I go to a piece of text called particle, right? And then I go back in here and I say particle, it's going to take a long time to think about how to render. It's very. Can you see where the particles are emitting from now? From the word particle. Right. So let's take down the particles per second to a kind of minuscule amount. And you can see After Effects is really calculating. It's very mathematical intensive because it's trying to figure out what does it need to do. So this is where you have to have a lot of processing power. And if I try to render this back, let's look at this. There you go. Right. So let's take that word particle and let's push it aside. Let's just push it apart, the word. Let's do that. Just kind of make it like that. And then if we play back, let's just try and play it back now. There you go. See? Let's drop that down. As you can see, it's now like a fountain just from the right. So you don't necessarily need to have a text. You can have a circle. You can have a shape. You can have an image. You don't try to put an image
You
here.
have a fire hose or something that you wanted this to emit from, right?
You can have a fire hose. You can have whatever you want to emit from. So that's how to use kind of a layer. Just disable that layer. So nothing's happening there, and we're going to delete that layer deliberately. So we don't want anything. So we say none. If I look at going right back to normal values, all right, we're going to delete that particle. Playground, we're going to put it back in. So it's default once again. Let's just go back in, put that up there. Okay, cool. So we got, I think you'll notice we'll have something called a grid, right? So we don't want the grid right now. We're going to go to the particle exploder. Now, if I had the particle exploder, there's a lot of stuff I could change here, the radius of the new particle and etc. with that little piece of text that I had. But look at this is quite cool. You've got gravity. So gravity is now set at 120, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's make that gravity far less. Now watch what happens to the particles. It's slowing down, coming towards
Right.
cloud. Now look at this. But what's super cool, and I'm going to move the position of this particle like this. This doesn't just drop to zero, the gravity actually can go to negative figures. So let me just see where my gravity's gone again. Right. So see that minus sign? It's gone to minus, right? Minus 55. So
Uh-huh.
now my particles are emitting upwards.
Hmm.
So it's reversing gravity, essentially.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So if we look at that, if we look at the speed, so we're changing the gravity back normal. Let's look at the speed, the force. There's a force. And again, it's going to calculate. Look at that force. There's a force applied to it. So it was at 19. Let me crank it down a little bit. So you got particles emitting in all sorts of directions, right? The force, which means there's a force attached to it at this point in time. So if something is affecting the particles, there's a force, like wind or something like that, right? So let's look at it. It's going to calculate again. There's my force. And let's look at the force radius. How much of a radius of that force do we want to kind of make happen? So we're going to go in here. And now we've got a different sort of particle emission going on. And then we've got effects. So that's particle playground. Very nice little thing to work with. It doesn't eat much RAM. It's pretty easy to understand. Let's look at something else called particle world, right? Which is, again, it's shipped with After Effects. And you might like, oh my God, what's going on here? So it looks a lot different, but it's pretty cool. You can really customize this to the way you want it to, right? So birth rate, if we look at this birth rate is 2. If I push it up, can you see you got a lot of different things happening? It's really lots of stuff. Little bits of, it looks like fireworks, and most people think, hey, that's cool. Let me kind of make it look like that. And I got this longevity, which how long does it stay on screen for? How short does the particle live on the screen for? Very important to understand this, because the particle needs to live on screen for a certain amount of time. The animation in this one, this is also a cool one to play with because it's pretty simple. Let's say we want a twirl, right? So look at this, right? So we
Oh.
got this, yeah, we got that. And then we're gonna go and maybe turn it down and say fire as an example. And now you got this fire going on, right? Let's take this velocity down. Look at this velocity. Can you see when I'm changing velocity what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
As I do that, I got kind of like a little fiery thing going on here. I'm gonna go to gravity. I'm gonna push that gravity down. Now we got kind of a tornado going on. So you can do whatever you want to do with particles. It's very simple. If I look at the floor position, this is the floor position. That's where the particle kind of starts from on the floor position if you wanted to. Let's just take this, reflect it on floor. So now if I take my floor position down like that, we're going to go, it's projected onto the floor. Look at this now. It's now projected onto the floor, those particles. All right. Now let's look at that birth rate again. Let's take that birth rate up to so. Okay. So once again, maybe we got a fire that's moving along the floor. Right. So let's go to the main one called particle. Now this is where all the magic happens. The particle type could be a shaded sphere. Okay, so I'm going to undo all of this so that we get our normal kind of little fire thing going on so you'll be able to understand it. We'll take the particle type and say maybe a bubble. Okay, so now you see we've got these bubbles.
Hmm.
All right, birth size. This is when the particle starts its birth. When it just appears on screen, what is the size of the particle? So we're going to say birth size is time. So maybe you want to do a kind of fish tank thing going on. So we'll take this, we'll make it white little bubbles. Let's make it really white. Top. Okay, we got that. Okay, we got a dead size. How when it ends, what is the size it's going to end at? So maybe this is from a little motor in a fish tank, that creates bubbles. It starts small and then it gets big. So what we'll do, let's actually grab a fish tank, shall we?
Oh, yes.
So fish tank, HD, just an image of a fish tank, I guess. Images. Let's find something that will work. Yeah, this should be fine. I think this should be cool. Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's see how big that image is. Yeah, great image. Let's just put that. Let's go bring this into the project. All right, back to that. And here's your fish tank. I'm just going to scale it down because it's much bigger than the composition. Just going to do that. And do that. And all particles have transparency built in, so you don't need to worry about anything. So let's look at see those particles? There they are here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So don't worry about the fish just kind of standing still. So we're going to go back to the particles. And what we're going to do, we're going to look at what we need to do with this immediately. Position X, Y it starts too high. So we're going to bring it down here. Position Z pushes us back or forward in space, which is three-dimensional, which is great. We're going to bring the y-axis down again, right? And now we've got this going on. So if I look at the velocity, look at that velocity. I'm scattering the bubbles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gravity, 0. So we're going to go back to the particles down here. You got a thing called size variation, which is great. It just gives you, and the particles will just change in shape and size, not shape, but in size as they move along. There's just variation, right? Simple to understand. Now let's go back up to this birth rate, and you can see immediately we've got a lot of particles going on, right? Longevity, let's look at that. Let's bring that further down. Okay, cool so far. Animation fire, velocity. If I go here, let's just change that. Oh, we don't need to worry about that so much. Let's make the gravity a little bit higher. Actually, what should be lower in this case? Okay, so about there. Okay. Resistance. Now watch this. There's where your kind of speed almost comes in. There's a resistance to the gravity. So this red is not supposed to be. Let's take the red color away. Okay. So you got this resistance, and then longevity. Let's make the longevity so it's going to last on screen longer. So here's your bubbles. Plop, 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 plop. But they're a little too big, right? So what we want to do is we want to look at the birth size. The
Right.
birth rate. If we go down here, that's a lot. That's too much. So we're going to leave it at 0.1. If I go to the radius, now we're talking. I got radius, y. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's starting
So
to look more believable.
it's beginning to look
What
believable.
about more translucent? What if you wanted to there?
So I'm going to make them smaller, right? Like this. We can
Okay.
make them translucent in this. We'll make them small. So there's this. This is in particles. It's starting to become believable. So this is the death and birth size, right? So the size is going to start really small, tiny, 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 and kind of go up to about that point. All right. So just save that so we know it's there. And then we've got size variation is at 69.3 or 70, which is fine. So it's just going to give you different size bubbles ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we can do an extra angle. See this angle? It's going to scatter the particles for us. And you're going to have just very different looking particles all over the shop. We can also add a texture to this if we want. Let's look at lens bubble as an example. See this?
Okay, that's kind of
They,
weird.
they kind of pop off screen, right? And look at this color. You got color map. Now, color map simply means from this color to this color, it's going to, let's just take this lens bubble off and let's just go back into bubble, right? So what this means is that from birth to death, it's going to move from this color to this. So let's make the end color red, right? So it'll start off white and it'll end off red at the top. So the particle's changing color over time. When it's born, it's white, and when it dies, it's red. That's what it says. So let's make it white again. Transfer mode, let's go to screen, or we'll even go to add, and we can start looking at, and you can see the bubbles are popping off as they're going up, right?
That's cool.
So if we take the different bubbles and we go into maybe a cube, let's just make it a cube. Right, again, you got, this is a simple one because it allows you to change the particle shape the way you want to change it. It's not difficult. Let's look at faded sphere. So here's these really cool little particles which we could use completely differently. I'm going to bring in a different image, and I'm going to show you with the very same particles how we can create some other magic. So I'm going to bring in this kind of snowy scene. Right, so let's just make that bigger. Right, we'll put the particles on the top. We'll close that bottom particle off. And of course, snow never rises upwards.
Okay? Not usually, no.
Unless it's in one of the Marvel movies. So let's go back to the particles, right? And effects controls. So gravity is set to 0.6. And if I push it further, you can see if I go backwards, right, you're not going to see it because the X and Y position is completely different to where we had put it for the fish tank. So if I look at the Y position, this is my Y position. There it is on the top. Now it's right at the top, but we want it to actually fall downwards. So how do we make it fall down? This is the question. So Neil, do you want to have a crack at this?
You throw it up in the air and it falls back down.
Yep, but how do we get it?
I would say you would have the where it generates from the y-axis be up high, and then have it with some gravity, and it will pull it down, right?
Okay, so we've got this going on here, right? So as you can do, undo that. Right, so we got that going there. So gravity at the moment, if we look at gravity, is set at 0.650. If I push the gravity up, it's going to go right to the top. You won't see a thing. So if I just undo that, do that again. That's where they are. Bring this down so we can see where we are. All right. Now, I've shown you guys basically where and how gravity works, right? So let me just make this thing bigger. It's really tiny. All right, let's go back to that. Okay, so all up here, burst rate, as you can see, we're going to make it a little bit more, right? And we're going to push this position up to the top like this so that it falls down. See this floor layer? Can you see this little thing called floor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a floor layer. So with the floor position, if I bring the position down, say about here, we have something really cool in this particular type of plugin, which allows me to do things like tell it what to do when it gets to that floor. So when it gets to the floor, you can tell it to bounce, you can tell it to stick, you can tell it to do a whole lot of cool stuff, right? So let's look at, firstly, I just want to see the size of this. Okay, that's fine. Okay, direction axis. If we look at this, you will see particle visibility, all floor action, I'll say bounce. Okay, so if it gets to the floor, it's going to bounce. But there's so much going on here that you actually it's not going to bounce right now. So we need to look at where is the particle and why is it now moving upwards? Someone needs to tell me.
Your generator is not up at the top of the image, so I would assume that the generator
Okay, so
point needs to be high.
if your generator is here, right?
Yeah.
As you can see, it's still going there.
So mess with your gravity, maybe go negative on the gravity or whatever it is.
Ah, well,
Yeah, there you go.
right. So your gravity affects it in the way we had done it earlier. So I'm just going to pull this apart. Can you see it? Just pull it so it fills the whole kind of comp. And now we've got this really cool snow falling down here. And I'm going to make this bigger like this. And you're getting away very easily with very simple automatic control here compared to when you go into particular and BCC. They're going to be a little bit different, right? So if I look at that and then I go to the flow position and flow action, let's say ice. Okay, see ice. Look at what happens on the ground. You see these particles?
Uh-huh.
They go and they fall onto the snow. Can you see down here?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then after a while they fade out.
You can tell it, yeah, they're going to fade out. You can actually get them to build up if you want, or you can, let's change that from, let's check that flow action, let's see, to glue. So it's going to glue itself. But as you can see, glue changes the physics. I'm sorry, just do that again. Glue changes the physics in a big way. Go back to ice. Okay. So that's ice. Let's go to bounce. And you're going to see when they hit that surface, they're bouncing. But again, when you change these values, they start to change the velocity. So you have to be very careful, right? So we can also say, what do we want to render, normal or reflected on the floor? Does it reflect on the floor? Now look at this. It's going to reflect, but of course we have to change the gravity again. So there's a lot you can do with this kind of thing. It's very, very cool to play with. Very simple. This particle world is very, very simple to understand. I'm going to delete that plugin completely, right? So we don't have it anymore. We'll delete the images as well. Let's move on to something else.
Okay, we've only got 5 minutes. Just FYI.
Okay, let's go to something that is, let's look at, okay, let's take something that Neil will enjoy and he's going to say, why didn't I install this? Yes. Boris Continuum Particle Illusion. This is phenomenal for people that want pre-built stuff in and really cool, really, really cool stuff. So I'm going to play this back and you'll see nothing's happening, all right? So if I go into the effects browser here, it comes with its own little effects browser, right? Look at this. Here's particles made for you. If I go in here, particles made for you, which you can completely custom design and do with as you please.
So this plugin has them all already kind of rebuilt for you.
Yeah, look at this bokeh effect. Yes,
that's nice. I
so
like
if
that.
if I apply this, here's a starry night, right? You got some cool stuff going on. So what I'll do is I'm going to bring in another image. Okay, cool. Let me see which image I'm going to bring in. And the project. Okay, cool. Let's put that in. Okay, let's make that really big. Like so. Let's change this value to add. All right. And you can see that we've got, let me just put it to screen actually for now. All right. So you can see that you've got some really cool stuff going on, right?
I like it.
But yeah, it's quite cool because you've got effects browser, and like you said, we have 5 minutes, but I'm going to delete this and I'm going to take you somewhere else.
Now you're going to disappear in about 2 minutes. Just FYI.
Right. So we'll go into the one that and particular is the industry standard. A lot of people use particular, and it's extremely maximum required. Oh man, come on. Okay, so I gotta just sign into my Maxon account just for a second. Hopefully I can get it done really quickly. Okay, let me get into Maxon. Won't be long. Otherwise, you can see all crosses and X's. Right, so that's what you'd see if you don't sign in and you don't use proper licensing. Just sign in. Okay, cool. And sign in here. Okay. Sign in. Good. Okay. Let me delete particular. Okay, so let's put it back on. We should be good. So at this point, it's just you should sign in beforehand, so it's the license is active.
Right. Well, we probably should just be wrapping things up here because you're going to disappear suddenly.
Okay, so here. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well,
You're going to go bye-bye here.
Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. Okay, there it is. There. We're not going to go by now, shortly. So particular, as you can see, you guys were familiar with the particle emission and all of that, but particular has got a ton of areas that you can. It's complex as complex can be if you don't know what you're doing, right? So they made it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go into design, into designer, and you'll notice when I go into designer, the amount of presets that you can start working from, it's pretty vast, right? So let's look at the designer opening up. Right, here we are. Look at the presets. You've got abstract and geometric, backgrounds, basics. Let's look at these fireworks, right? As an example. They're all made from particular. Nothing is made from outside particular, right? So let's go into this firework. Let's apply it. Okay, so here is your firework ready to go. And again, totally fully customizable.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Right, so I'll change the particle type from a sphere and I'll make it a cloudlet, and you'll see things begin to change. Let's just make this bigger so you can see. All right. Okay, if I press stop and I change from a cloudlet into, say, a streaklet, and I go in here and I got this continuous emit on bounce as an example. So you'll have to understand what all these mean. As you can see, it's so intensive on your machine. It's completely nuts. So you'll notice that in here, if I do stuff like this, let me drop this resolution down to a third actually. And let's see.
Did we just lose you, Mo? All of a sudden you're frozen. I think
we may have lost.
I think we just lost Mo. Okay. I knew that was going to happen. So anyway, it was really fascinating. Thank you so much, Mo, for showing us all the amazing things you can do with particles. And I'm going to put links in the comments about how to go to find these plugins. And we will see you all next time.
Have fun with it.
Yes.